There we go.
Welcome to the Two Chumps podcast. He's Emil Calamino. I'm Chad Wilson. We're back here for week 13, is it? College football, NFL action.
Week 13.
Blazing along, folks. Sorry to tell you, this football season is rapidly coming to its conclusion. And we're here to talk about everything that was and everything that is going to be. You know the deal here. We hop into the topics and then we hit the picks at the end because we know that's why a whole bunch of you are here. But don't sleep on what we've got to say on these particular topics coming up. Hey, there was a Monday night football game yesterday, and we need to talk about what we saw. There was a rematch of the Super Bowl with a different outcome. And one of these teams in here, we need to have a discussion about. We're going to do that on the show today. A major injury in college football might shake up things as the college football playoff. And we do need to talk about the implications of that. There's so much drama and side stories going on in that top four. And then now this new curveball has been thrown into it. So Emil and I will get into that on the show today. One Hall of Fame to be for sure quarterback thinks there's a whole lot of mediocrity in the game. We will talk about Tom Brady's comments on that coming up on the show. Couple of breaking news items in the NFL for us to discuss. And we're going to talk about Emil's favorite college football team, as somehow we end up talking about them every week. And we'll talk about my alma mater and just their current situation. Because these two schools, in my opinion, Emil, really do mirror each other. And they're kind of going through similar things at this time. So we will hop on both the Hurricanes and the Trojans. And then, of course, we will recap our picks last week and get into who we think is going to win. And we both, Emil and I, have Thanksgiving Turkey Day picks for you. So we have all that coming up. Emil, let's just jump right into this whole I know we want to talk about the situation at Florida State. And it's very it's heartbreaking to see situations like this happen in college football, and in particular to a kid like Jordan Travis at Florida State, who has overcome so much and has really improved year over year. It seemed to be moving. He was getting into that top NFL quarterback prospect discussion. He was moving himself into that because in today's game, he could kind of work,
Sure.
And that combined with Florida State being in the top four with a chance to go to the college football playoff, and in this year, a legit chance to win it all. And then against the opponent that they were up against, a lesser opponent, the season changes for him and could be career changing as he gets this lower leg ankle. It looked like he broke his ankle or severely dislocated.
It was a tough injury to take a look at. If that stuff bothers me, so I didn't want to look at it.
Yeah, one of those deals where someone falls on his ankle. It's facing in kind of the other direction, and immediately, well, that's it for him in this game and probably his season. And then you start thinking about career and what's going to happen with Florida State. But now the big question is this. Aside for the injury and how we feel about Jordan Travis and how unfortunate it is for the kid, is there are national championship college football playoff implications. So the big question roaming around today for everyone is what to do with Florida State. I will say the fortunate thing here, Emil, is that it happened with a couple of games left for us to evaluate Florida State. Had this happened in the ACC championship game, this would be really, really difficult.
So next year we'll fix a lot of this in a situation like this because we're going to have 12 teams, right? So here's, to me, I think is a more interesting question. Because if Florida State loses, we don't have to worry about it. They're going to say, well, they can't win without the quarterback. They're not one of the four best teams. But the question becomes, let's say Florida State wins this week against Florida, entirely possible, of course.
And who is also without their quarterback in this game.
Right. And let's say they get in a defensive struggle and they beat Louisville, right? Are they going to be playing Louisville?
Yes.
Okay. 17-13. So now they're undefeated and you're sitting there. So my question becomes with this. Are you trying to reward the four best teams for their season, or are you trying to pick the four best teams also considering the season, because here's the thing: if Alabama, let's say, were to win out, they go 12-1, they beat Georgia.
Right.
You both of them then are going to be in the playoff. Okay. If Georgia loses to Alabama and finishes 12-1, and Alabama goes 12-1.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
They're both going to be in the playoff.
Yes. Yes.
So then that leaves you, let's say Ohio State and Michigan play a game, I don't know, 24-21. So now you're left with this muddled, you've got all these teams that are probably better than Florida State without Jordan Travis, but you'd have an undefeated Florida State team. You'd have a Texas team that would be saying, well, wait a second. We beat Alabama the second or third week of the year. Now, in my scenario, I think it's safe to say I think Alabama has improved more than Texas has from the beginning of the year.
I would agree.
I think Texas has actually played worse football the second half of the year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be throwing a whole lot of benefit of the doubt towards Texas.
Right. So what I'm saying is this year is going to make the case for what we're going to next year with the 12-team playoff, because I think there's a potential this year where instead there's one team that's always saying we should have been the fourth team. I think you could have, if this breaks the wrong way or right way, depending on how you look at it, you could have 7 or 8 teams. Oregon plays a rematch with Washington. Oregon,
and you know what I say about rematches?
Yeah. So, well, I actually, I would be surprised after what I've seen as a Pac-12 fan watching everybody play if Oregon doesn't win that rematch. So you're going to be left with this really muddled, probably 8 teams I could see.
Well, here's the thing, Emil. You don't get off the hook because we don't have a 12-team playoff this year. So let's play out with your scenario. Let's say Ohio State and Michigan play to a 24-21 game, whoever wins that. Alabama does climb the ladder and then beats Georgia in the SEC championship game. And Oregon and Washington play a really tight one. Or what do you do? No, let's say Washington wins. Let's say Washington wins the rematch. So you got Georgia, you got Alabama, you got Washington in there. And now what do you do? I think in that case,
I mean, it's easy then. It's Ohio State's. I think if it
Florida
played
State's
out that way, yeah, I think if it played out your way, it might be easier because I don't care what people say. I'm still putting the 2 SEC teams in there. My undefeated Washington in your scenario is going in. The winner of Ohio State, Michigan's going in. And I have to look at Florida State and say, congratulations, you've had a great season. You're 13-0, but you're not in that caliber.
You are leaving a undefeated conference champ of a Power 5 conference out, though.
Unless they drill the next 2 teams they play. They go out.
What you're telling me right now is what's going to satisfy the masses is for Florida State to blow out their biggest rival probably at this point, right?
And then blow out or beat Louisville handily, beat them
by 10,
31-20. Score points. Show me that you can be an effective more so than anything.
So 20-6 is not going to do it.
No, if I'm on that committee, I got to see a team that has a quarterback that's going to make them competitive in that playoff. In other words, I got to see something that shows me this team can move the football and be some semblance of what I've watched for the first 11 weeks of the season.
Well, Emil, what if what you're talking about doesn't happen, but Michigan and Ohio State play to a 17-14 football game? Because we know Ohio State's a little challenged offensively in top games this year. What do you say to Florida State if that happens and you keep them out?
If they're undefeated?
If they're undefeated.
Well, at this point, in your scenario, Washington's undefeated, they're in. Ohio State, Michigan winner would be undefeated, they're in. You're going to ask me to leave out one of the SEC teams, depending on how that goes. I mean, if Alabama beats the snot out of Georgia,
probably not going to happen. So
probably not going to happen.
Georgia and Alabama play a tight one. Ohio State and Michigan play a tight one. Oregon upsets Washington in a tight one. All of these things could very well happen.
They probably won't, knowing the history, but you're right, they could.
And in that scenario,
George is in because as they get benefit of the doubt as two-time
yeah,
defending.
Emil, the big problem and where all of the potential bottle and rock throwing is going to occur is if Alabama gets in over an undefeated Florida State. Do you know the whole SEC bias thing is coming?
Well, I would argue if Alabama beats the two-time defending champion and finishes the season 12-1.
Yeah, that's logic talking. Which fan base is logical again?
I mean, remember,
Throw a name out there.
I mean, remember, you're picking in this sport a combination of the body of work and the team at the end of the year. So obviously you can't lose 3 or 4 games, but if you have 0-1 losses in this scenario, the way we do it right now, I got to look at your entire body of work and where you are at the end of the season. I can't just say, oh, well, you guys are 13-0. They're 12-1, but I got to look at who did you play? How are you playing now? Who's available? You have to use logic. Listen, I don't like the college. I tell you this all the time. I love college football games, but I invest far more emotional energy following the NFL because I know it's a meritocracy. At the end, they have a system. You earn your way into it, and somebody wins the Super Bowl. It's beautiful.
Well, I'm with you. And I also feel that the powers that be understand what that college football playoff is, bottom line, and that is it's got to be it's a moneymaker.
Moneymaker.
And so the whole idea of a Florida State going in there with a backup quarterback, if they've had to ooze by both or either one of those final games, is not something that they want to be involved in. They don't want to see a Florida State team there that's just a whole lot less of what they are, which I fully expect them to be, without Jordan Travis in there in a game against number 1 Georgia or number 1 Alabama. Right. I just don't see that happening. It's unfortunate. Florida State fans will be extremely angry if their team is undefeated and they're somehow kept out of this playoff at the hands of 2 one-loss teams. That's going to really be a serious problem. But at the end of the day, though, that is
you and I, and you know,
kind of the situation.
I just want to say we've really delved into this subject over the years, and you know the big differentiation between the two Saturday and Sunday league is the Sunday league you're playing common opponents, generally speaking. There's enough there, and there's a playoff system. It's simple. 14 teams get in. You do this, and this. They tell you before it starts. It's the way someone like me, and I think you like the way sports to work.
Sure.
Football, college football, while very interesting, and the games are awesome, it's kind of like watching gymnastics at the Olympics. You know, somebody holds up a card and goes 9 or whatever, 10.
Yeah, and I think how this whole thing came to be and why it still exists is because of what you said. You're not playing common opponents. These schedules are independently made, and one could kind of coerce his way into a championship game or into a playoff by just scheduling a certain kind of way. And so,
well, I mean, you have a record at the end of the year, right? But let's be honest, and I'll just pick on the game because we're talking about this game. Last week, Florida State, in losing their quarterback, beat North Alabama, which is an FCS team, right? They're 3-7 in the FCS, by the way, 3-8 now.
Yeah.
So you got to win on your ledger for a game against North Alabama.
What's more egregious to you, that game being played at this point in the season or being played early on in the season?
Oh, at this point in the season, I find that whole week the SEC does absolutely maddening. We've talked about that over the years. It drives me nuts. It's November. I don't want to see Alabama play Chattanooga in November when I sit on my couch on a Saturday.
Yeah, I'm all lathered up for the season, and then you throw that curveball at me. That's a real tough one. Well, to end all this, what a tremendous amount of pressure now on Florida State, because just winning is not going to be enough.
No, they need to win and win impressively. And like I said, I think you're on board with me, and I suspect the committee will be too. They don't want to put 2 games out there where one of the games people look at it and go, this team's not going to score 10 points.
Yeah, absolutely. So all eyes on Florida State and their offense coming up. Listen, I did say it. There was a Monday Night Football game last night for which I had a pick on the wrong side, which felt like the right side, Emil. It really did. Felt like the right side. The Kansas City Chiefs had a 17-7 lead at the half. They had several opportunities to get into the end zone in the second half. They had a lot of drops. Their star player, Travis Kelce, puts the ball on the ground inside the 10-yard line. Patrick Mahomes hits a wide open Valdez-Scantling at the 5-yard line and doesn't haul it in. That would have gotten the win and pretty much the cover. But nevertheless, once again, some things are highlighted here. Let me say with this disclaimer, the Chiefs are a 7-3 football team.
Yeah, they're a good team.
But you and I and many others have some concerns this day after with their offense in particular, because when you take Travis Kelce out of it, which the Eagles surely did, I saw him getting hit by 2 and sometimes 3 guys. They don't really have another guy, which harkens to the fact that why would you let a Tyreek Hill get out of town?
No,
I think that's.
There's so many. This is another case of all the eggs in the basket because they feel they have the quarterback situation solved. So we could just put anybody out there, and I think I said at halftime, and I'll show you my phone. I was talking to somebody texting, and they said, "Oh, this, they're dominating the game." I said, "The Chiefs are in trouble here," and he said, "What?" I said, "They should be up 17 or 20 points at the half. They're up 10. They let this team in the game." I said, I have a bad feeling where this is going. And I mean, there was, like you said, you highlighted the interception in the end zone, the fumble deep in the territory, the drop touchdown. But all that said, I think really watching them last night, their only saving grace is that they have an un-Chiefs-like defense. Usually the Chiefs play a little bit of leaky defense. They just figure their defense is very good, and that may save them this year. But I think if you took Patrick Mahomes off this version of the Chiefs and gave them a good quarterback, Geno Smith, we'll use him. I like him. I think this is a 500 club. I think he is what will get them to 11 or 12 wins because he's that good.
Yeah, I hear you. What Super Bowl team's going to win without their quarterback? I mean, don't misunderstand. I think Geno Smith is a winning quarterback. What I'm saying is I think Mahomes is so special with some of the things and throws he makes and the way he runs the game. I think he really. And I'm telling you, all of those Super Bowl teams have that guy. You'd have to go all the way back to like the Giants team where it could have been Hostetler or it could have been Sims.
I don't do that far back. I got Trent Dilfer.
Well, right. It didn't matter who you played.
I got Brad Johnson.
Yeah, you didn't. Those teams were defenses.
Yeah,
no question about it. So you could bring those up, but the rest, Emil, there's no Cowboys dynasty without Aikman, right? No. You needed Montana at the time that you had Montana. So that's just kind of what it is. But I do hear you in that nothing. He better stay upright.
Let me ask you this. If you're a defensive coordinator, if you're looking at the Chiefs, the only thing I'm doing is making sure Kelce doesn't beat me. Nobody else on that offense scares me.
I'm pressuring Mahomes. I'm locking Kelce down. I'm leaving everybody one-on-one with the rest of what they've got there. And then once I get a lead, I'm playing with 2 safeties up high, and I'm going to make you try and dink and dunk your way down the field.
Yeah.
And that's probably what they've seen a whole lot of this year.
So, and if you take teams like the 49ers and the Cowboys. Well, the 49ers just had a big injury with Hufanga, right? The kid from SC. But if you got teams like that with Dallas has 2 or 3 really good safeties that you could.
Yeah, I want to see you throw into that.
Yeah, you can double Kelce. And they've got 2 corners, Gilmore and Bland, that can lock those receivers. They can definitely lock them down.
Right.
That's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what we've seen over the last few weeks. And at least every time that the Chiefs have struggled in their 3 losses and other games where they've struggled to get by, it's that Travis Kelce's been taken out and there isn't a legitimate go-to after that. There isn't a get you out of trouble guy after that.
Let's not forget, Chad. He's 34 years old.
His brother says this is it, but he's now saying, I think I'm getting to the end of my rope right here. So We'll see. I don't, in the AFC, who's the real threat at this point? I don't know if I can trust the Miami Dolphins in January weather if they have to play outside of Miami.
I like what the Ravens have done so far defensively, and the Andrews injury bothers me because he is their Kelsey and kind of their go-to guy. So we'll see what happens. But I think it's interesting. I think the AFC is probably deeper. It's definitely deeper in terms of decent teams than the NFC. But I think the top of the NFC, the top 3 or 4 NFC teams, are probably better than almost all the AFC teams.
It's starting to look that way.
Yeah.
It's starting to look that way. And so we've hit that Thanksgiving point. Things are going to get played out as we see. Speaking of the NFL, Emil, you and I have talked about this quite a bit. And you have to find some kind of a happy medium in terms of injuries, trying to protect players. The league has been sued by its players. So we know what happens when people get sued. They go overboard with safeties and regulations, and the word liability gets thrown out there a lot. But Tom Brady made some interesting comments recently. I think he was on the Stephen A. show when he did this, talking about the product is starting to slip because instead of the focus being on the fundamentals, the focus has been now on trying to legislate everything out of the game. And he said, early on in his career, he wouldn't make certain throws. Against certain teams, he wouldn't throw the ball in a certain area because he did not want to get a player hurt or lose a guy. And he did mention, like Ray Lewis in particular, when he played against the Ravens, he wouldn't throw the ball over the middle a whole bunch because he doesn't need Ray Lewis taking out one of his.
I mean, he's talking a little bit about self-policing the injuries, right? I mean, if you're a quarter, back in the day, the older listeners will remember, the younger ones can look them up. The Raiders had Jack Tatum policing the center of the field.
Sure.
You were not going to lead a receiver. If you liked him, at least you weren't going to lead a receiver into that area because Jack Tatum was going to try to hurt him. And
anything that looks and seems any violent at all, physical at all, like this latest thing with this quote unquote drop tackle, someone has put a name on this. It looks like a tackle to me that unfortunately it ends up with the guy landing on someone's leg. Man, listen, it's a game. They move fast and bodies are moving around and stuff happens. And sometimes you just have a
Well, let me ask you, we're on this subject and I'm going to get into, I think I'm going to tie 2 subjects together here on Brady's theory on mediocrity. But let me ask you, now that you mentioned that, since we're talking about mediocrity and legislating stuff out of the game, do you see this like the horse collar tackle or completely different? Like I see it different in that the horse collar, you were using a piece of equipment. You're getting your hand inside the shoulder pad, almost like using a face mask. So I could see how you could legislate that out of the game, saying, listen, the same way you can't grab a guy and take him down by his face mask, you can't take him down backwards by his shoulder pads. But this to me just seems like I'm going to tackle you in space. You're big. I got to get you to the ground. I'm going to use leverage.
Yeah. And you're 100% correct on that. You're using equipment in the horse collar tackle, which I agreed needed to come out of the game. This whole thing now about this drop tackle, it's, if you can put a name on something, now you could find a way to get it out. And I think that's what's happened here. What it is a player is running away from you. You are behind him and you need to bring him down. And you grab around his waist, which is a legal thing to do. We're playing a contact sport. And how else am I going to get him down at that point? I need to bring my weight down to bring him down. I can't run with him. I cannot accelerate fast enough to push him.
You can hold on, but you'll look like a guy at a rodeo. You can hold on. He'll drag you.
You're going for a ride. He's going to get extra yards. You're going to be you're going to be on everyone's video looking like an idiot. And you didn't accomplish your job as a defender, which is to tackle and get a player down to the ground. It's unfortunate that these things happen, but they happen. And like I said, guys are bigger, they're faster, they're stronger. If we're going to go making all of these rules, man, we're going to get a totally watered down game, which is what Brady is saying we currently have. There isn't a
Well, at
focus on
some
fundamentals.
point, the Players Association is going to need to step up. And, I've always felt the NFL has been weak there compared to, say, Major League Baseball, which has a great union. At some point, the players who are complaining, saying, what are you doing? And a lot of them are, they're going to need to step up and go, okay, enough's enough. There's no way to legislate that play out of the game. Like you're saying, it's a tackle. You're not trying to necessarily hurt the guy. It just happens when big people run into each other at high rates of speed. I mean,
And we
it's
can't start this precedent. We can't go down this road because you're just going to start eliminating this, eliminating that. I mean, we can't get a kickoff return in a football game anymore.
well, I said to you as soon as I saw the article on him getting injured, I texted you the article, and my comment was like, how much can you legislate out of the game? It'd be like saying at NASCAR, we want to avoid accidents because people can get hurt. Well, they're not going to make left turns at 190 anymore. They'll be going 60. It'll be like watching you and I drive to work in the morning.
Right, exactly. What are you supposed to do there? I'm giving the analogy of what do you like similarly, if you're in boxing and a couple of guys die from a right hook, we're going to eliminate right hooks in boxing. What are we going to do here? It's
no, unfortunately, we know that it's probably not the safest sport in the world, which is why most people don't box.
Right. Could you imagine a situation? Mills Lane in the ring, 2 points, right hook, 2 points, right hook, 2 points. Like it's nonsense. So
no,
we really have got to. The NFL really has to be careful. You and I have talked about it. They think the fans will just be here forever, and man, you can drive them off, and something else can take. I mean, I talked about boxing. Could you tell me 20, 30 years ago boxing would be what it is now?
Hey,
but no,
something else. I won't get political here, but Bud Light ruined a brand in less than a week.
They did. They did
that
earlier.
People say it can't happen. Bud Light was a pretty big brand, and they did it. They did it in a week. So just to put a bow on this, my theory, we were going to talk about quarterback injuries. I think Brady's onto something, but I think another thing he's maybe left out of that dissertation that he may agree with is you don't have enough quarterbacks in this league. And you're seeing it play out this year with the AFC North, which is the best division so far. Burrow and Watson are out. The Browns are going to go play with a really good defense and a rookie quarterback who I don't think is ready yet. I don't even know who the Bengals quarterback is. You got the Giants playing the kid from who has a lot of moxie. I'm not criticizing him, young guy, Tommy DeVito, grew up a Giant fan. I mean, and you can go up and down the league, and you see these situations. I mean, the Cardinals played most of the year without Murray. They traded Dobbs. The Browns are probably saying to themselves, "Holy cow!"
But what are you proposing? Because when you have a salary cap, this is what happens. Stuff like this is what happens. So what are you proposing here? What's the remedy to this?
I don't know if the salary cap's going to fix this because I just don't know if there's enough quarterbacks. I mean, if you really look at the NFL, you need 32 I think the hardest position in sports is to be an NFL quarterback. Just based on the decisions you have to make in the time. I don't know if we just don't produce 32 guys at any one time anymore.
And is there a solution to that? By the way, I believe the Browns have signed Joe Flacco.
They have, but the irony, and this is so Cleveland Browns, I digress here, but I have to say it. You're in the middle of a great season. You're 7-3. You have a competent backup quarterback that you're paying $2 million a year for. By NFL standards, a bargain. You trade him away to keep a rookie as your backup, and you basically trade him away for a bag of footballs. Okay.
Talking one Josh Dobbs is what you're saying.
Yes, they traded him to the Cardinals for what was basically nothing.
I was blown away by that.
Oh, I mean, I was
blown away.
I'm
sorry. It didn't pay off.
Pay
off in a number like a bunch of victories for the Cardinals, but they were in games because Josh Dobbs was doing his job well.
But I'm saying, why would if you're on the other end of that, and I know hindsight's 2020. I would have told you that in August. I just don't pay attention enough to the Browns. Right. Like, hey, the guy who likes massages also might get hurt too, or he might go for another massage. I don't know, but I would probably keep that guy.
Yeah, listen, maybe they felt with DTR, they had the same player as Dobbs. They're learning that they don't. But again, we're only 1 week into the whole DTR thing. We'll see what he brings to the table. Thankfully for the Browns, they can play some defense.
Yeah.
And they can make it to where he doesn't have to win the football game for them. So it'll be interesting to see. But you've got a good point there. There aren't enough quarterbacks. Or maybe there's a situation like, and listen, this goes back to what you've always said, got to draft one of these guys every year.
But when they were kind of making fun of Jerry Jones in the summertime or whenever he made that trade for Trey Lance, I was on board. I'm like, listen, you're going to give me a guy that was just picked from the top 5 in the draft a couple of years ago, who's 23 years old. What do I got to give you? A 5th round pick? Sure. I'll try it.
Easy money.
Easy money. I'll do it all day. I'll do it every year if you do that with me.
Yeah, that was a no-brainer. So, a good personnel move there by Jerry.
No, and maybe it doesn't work out, but every team should be thinking of that position, in my mind, in terms of quantity. And I think that's what Brady made. I'd love to be able, if we could ever ask him, like, don't you see like what we're seeing? I mean, you could watch the games. I mean, that Cleveland-Pittsburgh game on Sunday was brutal.
Yes, which nice segue into our breaking news today, which is finally the Pittsburgh Steelers let go of Matt Canada. I've got a couple thoughts on this. I am a guy for giving a coach his honest amount of time to work things out, work through the problems, come up with some solutions, figure out what you need to do personnel-wise, what's going to work for this team, put guys in the right spot. Sometimes you're going to be wrong about it. It takes a little more time to go insert someone else, move someone to another place. I feel that way about coordinators, feel that way about head coaches. I think we run through them too fast. And so those Pittsburgh Steelers embody that thought process that I have. They're not one for many changes. They've had 3 head coaches in their long and storied NFL career. And by firing Matt Canada today, it's the first time since 1941, Emil, that they have had a coaching change in the middle of the season.
Wow.
With all that said, the noise was loud last year with Matt Canada. The noise was loud the year before. It just has never really happened there. And I think Mike Tomlin could have avoided all of this. I get loyalty as a man. As a man and as an organization, but he could have avoided this situation by making that change in the offseason when it was so clear that that's what you needed to do.
They didn't really seem to ever figure out what they want to be. And if I look at the way the Steelers offensive roster is constructed, if I'm going in there, right, I've got to figure out a way to run the football and throw play action passes off of that, because I don't think the quarterback is good enough to just get back there and start slinging the ball around, like get back there in empty sets. And I just don't think he's that guy. And for me, the Steelers, they have Najee Harris. He's frustrated. They've got a bunch of offensive players frustrated. And I get offensive players often get frustrated if they don't get the ball.
Sure, receivers, 100%. They're known for that. They're
known for that. But I think the Steelers have to realize, like, listen, we have to get the running game going, figure out how to be the Steelers.
And that Steelers football, you had the Ben Roethlisberger years, a generational talent where you could throw the ball around.
Yeah.
But you're in Pittsburgh, you're from the Steel City. Throwing the ball around doesn't really fit the narrative of that town. It doesn't really go with the weather. So you've got Kenny Pickett, and that's what you really should have been. I will say this, Emil, and maybe some will disagree. That whole plan was hamstrung by the ineffectiveness of Najee Harris. You picked that guy high up in the draft, and he really has not been what it is you guys thought he was going to be as a Pittsburgh Steeler, so much so to the fact that you have now benched him in favor of, another guy.
Warren, right?
Yeah, who looks to be pretty solid, but this comes on the heels of people just wanting Canada out. And now
so let me ask you this. You're the film guy, since we're on the Steelers. Is it Najee Harris? I'm asking. I don't have an answer. Is it Najee Harris or the offensive line? Because I know they've struggled in the offensive line the last couple of years.
It might be a combination of both, but I think it's a little more of Najee Harris, especially his running style. It's more Le'Veon Bell, and that's not what you have up front to be doing that. So the guy that they have in there now, Jalen Warren, is the guy that hits the hole. And he's a one-cut go, and he has been more effective. Emil, was it last week? 129 yards rushing, I think, on 9 attempts. Do the math on that.
Yeah, well, the
So had he
Steelers
been
are
the
going
guy
to
really
have
from the
to.
beginning, the offense might have looked different, and it might have been able to allow Kenny Pickett to ease into things. And like you said, off of that type of running, we can go play action and hit over the top, with
And that's the only way they're going to get big plays there right now is, to be effective running the ball and then hit your big plays off of that. I just don't see them being a team that's just going to, you're going to see them just quarterbacks in the shotgun and just slinging it
No,
all.
they're not. No, they're not going to do the whole flag football thing. Also in the news today, and I was completely shocked by this, is the Indianapolis Colts releasing Shaq Leonard. Emma, I think this guy's a team captain. He's definitely been the center force of the defense for years. So I'm wondering what in the world could have happened there for this to happen. And then for me, it really highlights how in the NFL, and you touched on it a little bit just a bit earlier, it's just how little leverage these players have and how quickly things can change for just about anyone in this league.
Well, he's only 28 years old. Now, I do know he's had a couple decent surgeries. And, those things affect different. Some guys come back from them and it's like no big deal. And, depending on what you had surgery on and what's bothering you. I mean, I don't know if he's just not as effective or what the deal is. I will tell you this. My team needs a couple of linebackers. Wouldn't mind taking a look.
Yeah, and I saw all of the comments on Instagram when that, information was posted there and, hey, come to this team, come to that team. I will say this, Shaq Leonard, obviously a guy with the right measurables, a good player, a playmaker, but he was in a defense in previous years that was really centered around him. And that allowed him to be the playmaker that he became. And now when he goes somewhere else, and he will end up somewhere else, will he be in a defense that tailors to him like that? And when it doesn't, can he function as an NFL football player when he can't be what it was he rose to the heights off of? He's going to go fit into a system now that might not be ideal for him.
And is he willing to do that? That's the bigger question.
Right, because you've reached a certain status. You went from, a guy that no one really thought about, came out of South Carolina State. I've got this chip on my shoulder. Now you're this all-pro player. You got $100 million contract, and now your whole mindset has changed, and you feel like it's about you. Well, today you found out it's not. You're replaceable. You're a dry erase marker in this league, as all these players are. And so now what is his mindset when he goes to another team? That's going to be interesting.
Well, if he humbles himself, he might find himself in a good situation. If not, he's going to find himself on a bad team. So what usually happens with these guys that have, name recognition.
I think it's going to be crucial for him to go to a good football team.
Yeah, if he has the right attitude, he'll end up on a good team because they'll see the value in a guy with his measurables. If he comes in, with an attitude, he's probably going to end up on a losing team, and they'll put him on the field because people know who he is.
He'll end up in Philadelphia. You know it, I know it, everyone knows.
Well, it seems like they signed everybody.
These guys are movers and shakers in the middle and throughout the year. It's just really crazy. He's got to clear the waiver wire, though, which I doubt he will do. There's a significant salary to pick up. I know that's your area. So,
that's why he probably will clear the waiver wire, because they'll want to negotiate a new salary. Most teams
clears that waiver wire. It's going to get really interesting.
Right.
Yeah, it's going to get really, really interesting. All right. Our final two topics here. Emil, I'm watching the University of Miami, my alma mater, play on Saturday, and not, battling with Louisville, going toe-to-toe with team, headed to the ACC championship.
Good ball game, by the way.
No, definitely a really good football game, but knowing there's some things missing here and there. And our fans are restless because there's 5 championships in the cabinet upstairs in the building. Same with the USC and, a couple of other schools where, it's difficult now for the fans to understand that you're not going to overnight get back to where you are. What we have is one of ours, an alumni, come back to coach, and he's been in some great places, Alabama, Oregon, and I'm seeing a difference. If nothing else, I'm seeing a team that's playing hard each and every week. All right, there's no laying it down. There's no taking plays off. There's no taking games off. There's no absolute collapses going on. So I'm seeing that, and I'm wondering what fans think. I'm wondering how far away do they think we are? I'm going to say this. I don't know what 2024 is going to be. It might look somewhat similar to this year. Are fans going to be able to handle that? Because I really think 2025 is where it's going to be at.
Yeah, I was going to say, I actually have, as someone who I always say on the show, you know, if I wasn't a USC fan, I'd probably be a Miami fan. I have, that's our next topic. So I have less problem with Miami this year, and I'll tell you why. The things first of all, they were really far down. It's going to take a couple recruiting classes. It's going to take a culture change, and I think they're on the road to that. The efforts that you've seen, even in the Florida State game, the effort you saw against Louisville this week against good teams, they're in the ball games, they're playing hard, and it's really at this point, I think it's more they just need more talent.
Yeah, and I think they need a talented quarterback.
Yes.
Yeah, they need a talented quarterback, and that's no shot against Van Dyke. All right. But they need something really dynamic there. I don't want to say elite because there's only a handful of elite.
No, I'm with you. I actually think if the fans can be patient here, which is a big if in sports these days, I think maybe not next year, but I think the year after, Miami will be a team that you'll have to reckon with.
And I think that's a team that could win the ACC championship.
Yeah.
Get into the college football playoff. I see that 2 years from now, but our impatient fan base is going to be up in arms if this thing isn't happening.
And where do you go? Like, I mean, here's the point. Other than, you know, and I get, you know, the strategy part, Cristobal bothered me with in that, because he's done it more than once with that Georgia Tech thing.
You do those things, you learn, you fix them.
Yeah, you don't do it again, you know?
Right, of course.
Yeah. So, but I think everything else he's done in terms of recruiting, getting the kids to play hard,
fixing the trenches up front.
Yeah, he's a Miami guy. Where do you go from there? If you're just going to quit on him in 2 or 3 years, where do you go?
Emil, I've said to some of our alumni, he has to work. He has to work. You brought in a guy with a resume in terms of places that he's been. Okay, I'm not saying as a head coach he's done crazy things as a head coach. Okay, he's young in that, but he's been in the right places and seen the right things. He's an alumni, so he's going to have passion for seeing us get back to where we were when he was playing. And you have now thrown money at the program in ways that you haven't done since college football has turned into this social media era, this big facilities era. You have done all these things. If that doesn't work, how is this job attractive to anyone that could potentially bring it back to where it was? I don't see.
No, and then you're left with, you go back to the early 80s and you're looking to find your next Howard Schnellenberger, and that's really a crapshoot then. I mean, because
I don't think people realize just how fortunate we were there.
Yeah.
College football was a totally different game. This guy came in, did something that really can't be done like that anymore. There's no putting up a border around the state of Miami. The kids can go wherever they want. There's the internet. They can see it. They can see anything they want, go wherever they want. They take trips. There's no
Go scroll through Miami's history prior to Schnellenberger. They were a nice private school in the South where you got a good education. They'd go 5-5 back when they played 10 games.
Friday night football games.
Yes, they'd play Notre Dame and get beat 51-7. That was what they were. And then this guy came along and saw the opportunity. But it was kind of lucky. Sometimes better be lucky than good that they found him. So do you really want to go back to looking for the next guy? So you got to give this guy all the leash you can to try to.
And I see the progress, just not, the young generation that needs to see things quickly turned around. I'm sorry. That's just not how this is going to go. It's over 20 years now since we've been in that big game. you got to realize it's going to take some time, and I'm seeing the progress. So I'm not sure there. I'll tell you what, if you guys out west, and by you guys I mean the Trojans, could have sent your quarterback over to us for games on Saturday, and somehow we send our defense over to you guys for
We have a team.
We'd both be in the top 4 right now playing for the college football championship.
Those schools to me are so ironically linked, right? So you get most of these athletes and actors and actresses, right, that are bi-coastal. They have a place in Southern California, place in Miami. You've got 2 wealthy private institutions with good educations that somehow managed over the years to be at the top of the college football world, right? So, and I think USC is in a similar situation where I have more problem with USC than where Miami's at. Is one, they wasted a generational quarterback.
Yes.
Which is very odd. And 2 is I think they have a coach who's a little bit delusional. He doesn't see the value, at least not what he says publicly, and that's all I can go by. They don't let me in the locker room.
Right.
He doesn't see the value of the trenches. He doesn't seem to see the value of defense. I mean, he says he gives lip service occasionally to it, but he doesn't do things that make me think he's going to change it. Strength and conditioning to me is an issue. I like to watch college football, and I look at teams, and I've been watching this long enough. A Georgia or Alabama player looks a lot different in the offensive and defensive line than a USC player, and that wasn't the case.
And that stuff matters. Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, Alabama. USC doesn't look like that.
But they used to.
They did when they were winning. They were winning.
Yes.
And your strength coach and your strength and conditioning program is probably the most underrated part of everyone's program, until you really start to realize how much that matters when you get out there on Saturdays. And
you could tell the way these guys fill out a uniform who has the strength and conditioning program.
You could tell from the word go.
Yeah.
I distinctly remember the 2001 Hurricanes team. It might have been the 2000 team coming out there and watching that opening game that year and just seeing the defensive linemen in their stance. Because I remember the defense taking the field first and just seeing the build of the front 4 that were down there. I said, man, these guys have been getting after it this offseason. That almost always equates into a really, really good season. And listen, Emil, I think Lincoln Riley's an over-believer in his schematics. And as long as that exists, it's going to be a problem for USC. But let's say he's out the door, whether he's pushed out or he sees the handwriting on the wall, which he seemingly is that kind of a guy. He might walk here. What do you do next at that head spot for USC? Who's the next guy?
Well, I think 2 things. You may not know this, or you may. They have a new athletic director. Bond, the guy that hired Riley from Cincinnati, he's since retired. I think he was forced out. There were some allegations there. We won't get into that. They hired the athletic director, a female, I forget her name, from the University of Washington. And I think USC, as funny as it sounds for LA, if they go with another hire, I think they need to not necessarily go for the glam and glitz, but I think they need to roll their sleeves up and really look at somebody that's going to build a program. And I'll tell you somebody off, and just watching what he's done, I've been impressed. And I don't even know his name. I'm embarrassed. The head coach at the University of Arizona impresses me.
Dead fish.
I like what he's done there. They actually play some defense there.
Now, his name was Mud early on, but at a place like Arizona, you can afford to just let a guy ride and learn. And
I'm not saying he's the guy, but I'm saying I'm for finding somebody like that is at that tier below the blue bloods that wants to take the next step, and going for someone like that, but maybe not. I love the guy at Iowa State. I know he hasn't had the big time success recently that he had early on. I still like Matt Campbell.
Yeah, his name was hot and heavy for a while. And then as you turn down jobs in that situation, it starts to tail off.
But that's okay for me now.
Can't win forever at Iowa State.
No, you're not going to win forever. And I think I've seen things that they do there where they win games that they shouldn't win, and his teams are physical. I think USC if and when they have to replace Riley. And I think he will leave at some point, maybe not this year, but I think he's smart enough to the next decent opportunity, he'll take it. I think they need to get physical again. I think
they're going to the Big Ten. There's no question they've got to get
that's just the nonsense. I mean, the entire scheme, the nonsense with these that's not USC. I know you're never going to get the fullback back again, but USC is still quarterback gets under center on occasion and turns around and hands the ball off to somebody.
Yeah, and that's always been USC. And in a Pac-12 conference, which was a Pac-10, that wasn't known for physicality, they would be that team that was physical. And so hopefully we see that. All right, my friend, it's time to get into these picks. Let's recap it and let's predict the future.
I'm going to lay this out early for people before we get into the actual picks. So last weekend, Chad and I went 5-1 in college, 3-3 in the NFL. So let me hit you with some numbers here. You like numbers? You like these numbers?
We all love numbers.
So we were 8-4 for the week. For the year, college football, I'm 22-14. You're 26-10. So that's 48-24 in college. NFL, I'm 20-12 with the push. You're 17-16. So that's 37, 28-1 in the NFL. Okay. Our overall records are almost identical. I'm 42-26 with a push. You're 43-26. It's 85-52. Do the math.
Hey, listen, we've been saying it week in, week out. All right. You should have been here from the beginning. Thank God if you got here in the middle. If you're getting here now, prop up. Maybe we can wash away all of your sins that you've had going on. If you still got money in your account, if your old lady will still let you throw a couple dollars at a game, maybe we can help you get back to zero.
Let me help the folks here just so you know the math on this. If you play the same amount, which you should on every game, you shouldn't try to figure out which are your best picks. Okay.
How else am I going to buy that house though if I don't just load up?
You got to hit 52.3% with the VIG being at 10% to break even. We're hitting about 62%. Guess what? You're making some money.
Serious coin.
So last week, let's recap college. In the college game, I had 3 picks, right? I had Penn State, gave 20.5.
Woo! Are you?
I only won by 21, but I felt that's the kind of opponent that was tailor-made for what Penn State needed. Because I knew Rutgers wasn't going to score much in that game.
I was a little sketchy on that pick because I just don't love their offense, but it worked out, man.
It worked out. I had the Clemson pick. The line felt odd to me. 6.5, 7. Yeah, I said something's wrong. They want me to take North Carolina here, so I'm taking Clemson. Clemson won by 11. That was a win. And then finally, when I gave the pick, UCLA was getting 7. By game time, it was down to 4.5 or 5. It didn't matter. USC's season effectively ended up in Oregon.
Yeah, there was nothing for them to be playing.
There was nothing, and I expected UCLA. It's hard for me to say this, but this year's Bruin team is physical defensively.
Offensively as well.
Yeah, and they run the ball, and I said, that's not a game you're going to do well in if you're not ready. No. Yeah, if you're not matching. So that was an easy one for me. Now, you had your first loss. You had Duke. That was
I think I've squeezed all the juice out of that Duke thing.
Yeah, going back to the preseason, you loved Duke. You squeezed all the juice. Let's leave them alone for the rest of the year. That was your only loss. You had 2 nice wins. You took the 3rd string quarterback in Kansas plus 7.5.
Absolutely.
So that was good. And you finally got on the Arizona train. I gave you them middle of the season. I said, this team, watch this young quarterback. And they're going to be a top 15 team or top 10 team, maybe.
No, I couldn't believe, Emil, that they were only 1-point favorites in that game. That just really, blew me away. And I was tripping over myself to take that one. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I just want to say a little something here about the quarterback from first of all, because he did get me a victory. 3rd string quarterback who was a walk-on. This is Cole Ballard. This is the son of the Colts GM, Chris Ballard. And this is a kid that was, he played football and baseball in high school and was really going to head the baseball route, but decided, let me go walk on at Kansas. They're showing me a little bit of love. I can go over here, hang out, see what happens. Boom. Couple of guys get hurt. He's in there. He's playing against their biggest rival. And yeah, they didn't get the win. They should have won the game the week before. They didn't get the win. But hats off to that kid, Cole Ballard, man, going in and
Put it himself quite well. Kansas
Yeah,
scored
absolutely.
27 points.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Well,
that
kudos
was a
to that
really
kid.
good pick. So what? I'll recap the NFL portion of the actual picks when we get there. I will give my picks here. You give yours. Then I'll recap the NFL, and you can give your NFL picks first. How's that?
Well enough.
Okay. I'm going to start with a team that's been good to me this year.
Uh-oh.
When I've taken them, I've done well. I like Oklahoma giving 10.5 to TCU. Oklahoma, they're a team that loves to beat the hell out of middling teams. They did it for me against West Virginia. And I think this is the same type of situation where they just come out here and put it to TCU. Oklahoma needs a couple things to break right for them, I guess, in tiebreakers to end up in that Big 12 title game, the last Big 12 title game that'll be played. I think if they win and Oklahoma State wins, I believe it's the tiebreakers are going Oklahoma State's way. They would play Texas, but I think Oklahoma will go get the job done. They seem to be on a mission. 10-2 would be a nice year based on what happened last year. So I like them. Next, I'm going to come to a team where it's the opposite. I said earlier in the show, I think Texas, while they're 10-1 and it's been better than they've done in recent years, I think their level of play has gone down a notch in the second half of the season. And they're playing a rivalry game, an in-state game against Texas Tech. And Texas Tech is 6-5. They're a capable football team. They're getting 12.5 points. The pressure's clearly on Texas here. I know you could say, oh, it's a scoreboard game. They're going to want to blow them out. I get it. But I think Texas, they wanted to blow out their opponent last week. They won by 10. I mean, I think Texas Tech hangs in this game. 12.5 is a fat number. I'm going to grab the 12.5 there. Finally, I'm going to pick the big game. We got Michigan, Ohio State. And if you asked me 4 weeks ago who I was going to take in this game, I would have told you confidently I like Michigan. But I've seen two teams go in completely opposite directions the last month of the season. I think Ohio State's consistently gotten better. I think the offense has improved. They have Marvin Harrison Jr., who is probably going to be, if not probably, I'm confident he's probably the best guy on the field, period. And they're getting 3.5 points here. They've lost 2 straight years to Michigan. I think Michigan the last couple of weeks has scared me. The offensive performance against Penn State was weak. Last week they struggled with Maryland. I really think this is a revenge spot for Ohio State. I'm going to grab the Buckeyes plus 3.5.
So go ahead and summarize that for me because I didn't.
Oklahoma minus 10.5. Texas Tech plus 12.5. Ohio State plus 3.5.
He is rolling with a couple of doggies. Look at him jumping out there, taking the big game at the end. Got balls there, my friend. You got
gotta grab them.
All right, let's talk about what Chad's doing in college football this weekend. I'm going to start off in the ACC, and I'm going to ride with Syracuse. Syracuse is taking on Wake Forest. It must not been the kind of year I think that Syracuse has wanted, and it's going to result apparently in the firing of their coach Dino Babers. So it's seemingly what I have been able to see in following Syracuse is that these players like the guy. And if he's going to go out, I'm sure they're going to go hard to send this guy out as a winner. They're taking on a Wake Forest team that beat them last year. And at this point, Emil, like Wake Forest is, I think, kind of punted on the season at 4-7. They're far away from what they were a couple of years ago. They have not been competitive at all in the last couple of weeks. A grand total of 13 points scored in their last couple of games. I don't see them coming into Syracuse upset-minded, super motivated to do anything against a Syracuse team that we always know play well in their stadium. And they're playing for a coach. They want to send them out a winner. And though they've only won once in their last 4 games, they've been competitive though. They've been in games. They've had chances to win, and I still think they have a fire. So give me Syracuse as a small 3-point favorite. Still staying in the ACC. It's the battle of the Carolinas, North Carolina traveling to NC State. Last year, NC State was a winner in this game. And so we've got a little bit of a revenge situation in a rivalry game. And North Carolina, on top of being in that revenge situation, is coming in off of that loss that you benefited on last week with the loss to Clemson. And listen, Drake May is a guy that everyone's talking about. And if he wants to keep his name into things, he needs to come out of here and have a really good game against this, again, rival. NC State's going to be pretty giddy and happy off of that Virginia Tech win that they had last week. And I don't know if they're going to be in the right, best place mentally for a North Carolina team that's coming in here with blood in their eyes and a ton of motivation. So much so that North Carolina is a favorite, which is a little funny. And it's kind of your situation last week with the line screaming and begging you to take North Carolina, and you took Clemson. Well, this line is begging you to take NC State. I'm going to ride with North Carolina as the road favorite in this rivalry game. And speaking of rivalries, going to head all the way out west to the west, top west, Oregon and Oregon State. Oregon is coming into this game with a lot on their shoulders. They're trying to get themselves back into that Pac-12 championship game. All right. They're obviously going to be thinking about their opponent that's coming up in that game and everything that's at stake. A potential of getting into the college football playoffs with the chance that they have to get in there, all while taking on their rival, their in-state rival, who is a damn good football team. And that in-state rival, are coming in here off of a loss. So all of the motivation is on Oregon State's side. And Oregon State they can play really, really good defense, right? We know that they can do that. We know that they are not going to lay down in this game. And they lost last year to Oregon. They just came off of this close defeat to Washington. And it's not one of those situations where they laid it all out against Washington. They're just going to throw their hands up. No, this is Oregon coming to town. And the last part of this is the disrespect that odds makers have put on Oregon State by making them a 13.5-point underdog, albeit at Oregon. There's too much on Oregon's mind, and there's too much motivation that's been thrown in Oregon State's direction for, I think, Oregon to beat the Oregon State, especially the kind of season that Oregon State is having, by 2 touchdowns. I just don't see that happening. I see this being a well fought out fist fight of a game. So give me Oregon State as a 13.5-point underdog.
Can't argue with that. So let me summarize. You got Syracuse -3. You got North Carolina -3. And in the Civil War, are you offended by that, by the way? Because they dropped that name. I can't use the Civil War anymore.
I can't believe that they are doing. I can't believe that name that they're being used. Strip that.
Yes. Oregon State +13.5. We're still calling it the Civil War.
It is what it is. It's been that for 100 years, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So, okay, let's recap the NFL, and then you can hit me with your NFL picks. You had a tough week in the NFL. It would have been a good week had Scantling caught the ball. You had a good winner on the Jags.
Look, I got hosed in the Rams-Seattle game, too.
Yeah, that was a tough one late in the game. Seattle had that game, folks, in control, 16-7 going to the fourth quarter.
Gino got hurt.
Yep, but the Rams looked like they were not going to score points in this game, and then all of a sudden they throw up a 10 spot in the fourth and win 17-16. So Chad took a hard loss there. And then again, Chiefs on Monday night, up 10 at the half, drop touchdown pass. He takes a loss, 1-2, still a winning record on the year, 17-16 with the push.
Barely hanging on there, baby.
17-16, excuse me. No push for you. That was me. Now, I was 2-1. I started off. The Bears should have beat the Lions outright. Their coach coached that last 6 minutes of that game like he was trying to get the number 1 seed. He was so conservative. And I just knew where that was headed. Yeah. I said, I'm watching that game. I said, Lions are going to win this game. But I got 9 points. We're good. I win. I took the Cardinals, who probably should have won this game outright. There were some really
They had their chances.
Odd coaching decisions like passing on field goals with 12 minutes left, down by 5. At the end of the game, end up with the ball down there needing a touchdown. But they lost by 5. I got 5.5. That's a winner. And then I took a hard loss on Sunday Night Football. The Broncos won the game for me by 1. But when you're given 2.5, that's not good. So yeah. I went 2-1. I'm 20 wins, 12 losses, and a push on the NFL season. I cede the floor to you.
No, that's a strong NFL season that you have going there quietly there in the background. I'm just treading water, but I feel good about what we've got going on. Well, it's our tradition for us to take some Turkey Day picks. So on Turkey Day, I'm going to ride with the Washington Redskins, Emil. The Redskins are coming off of a blowout loss. I mean, they got double-digited in their game last week, and it was to the New York Giants. I don't know where the New York Giants found 31 points from. I don't I don't know. I don't know if Hoffa or whoever donated, whatever the case may be. These dudes went out and gave the third string backup quarterback 31 points. It's going to be a rough week in Washington, albeit a short week. They're coming to town highly, highly motivated. Your Cowboys, Emil, are on easy street. Another blowout win. They listen. If it's one thing these Cowboys know how to do this year, it's really lay it on teams that just can't defend themselves, which is what the Carolina Panthers are this year. So they go out, they beat these guys on the road by 23. I think they're going to be floating through on easy street and not in the right mindset. You are playing a divisional opponent. This is the Cowboys. This is the Indians. This is everything that goes back. So I think Washington comes to town. I just think there's a great scenario in the NFL where a team that has lost by double digits is facing a team that won by double digits, and getting double digits in the spread is just something really good. Add to that when it's a division rival, and I like the Redskins as 10.5 here. I've had my ups and downs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I've definitely had that. But I am seeing a Colts team that is having an up and down year, and I'm not sure what's going on internally. Hence the Shaq Leonard being released today. Something's going on in the background there. And they come into this game off of a win and I believe a bye. And so I don't know if the Colts are of the right mindset coming into this football game. What I do know is that Tampa Bay is coming into this one feeling they're a little chapped. Yeah, the 49ers came to town and did 49er stuff and beat them by double digits in their own house. I think Tampa Bay is going to come to town as a team with a great amount of motivation here this week. And I'm not sure what the Colts have got going on. So, you know what? I'll take the Bucs as underdogs in this football game. The New York Giants, Emil, I, again, don't know where the 31 points came from. Maybe they've got a little luck and something going on. Something's happening there with this DeVito kid. Who I happen to know, by the way, faced the kid in high school. I want to point that out, and met him in this pre-draft training. So great kid. I'm really happy for what's happening for him. I'll be really happy if he does whatever he did last week and brings it back over again this week. Would really, really love that. Because in my mind, Emil, who are the New England Patriots to be laying points on the road? That's nuts to me. And so I'm going to just ride with the Giants. I think they've gotten some confidence off of what happened last week, and then a little bit of a slap in the face when the Patriots, who are a complete and total absolute mess right now, coming to town as favorites in the Giants' house. No way. So I'm going to take the Giants as 3.5-point underdogs in this game.
Let me recap. Chad likes we call them the Redskins on the show. In case any of you are new to the show and you're confused, that would be the Commanders when you're looking for the lines. Okay. He's got the Commanders, the Redskins, whatever you want to call them, plus 10.5. We got the Bucs plus 2.5 for Chad, and the New York Football Giants plus 3.5. By the way, the Giants did score 7 points on defense last week, but even getting to 24 offensively, it was.
I think that was the DeVito factor. He had him.
And I do like this the first pick, even though I'm a Cowboys diehard, because I think either way, the back door is going to be open in that game. I can't see the Cowboys defense bringing the energy needed in this game to cover that kind of number against a guy who
in this day and age, Emil, you got to be careful when you say stuff like the back door is going to be open. But
we don't even listen. This is a family show, but the Redskins, I think,
as we talk about gambling,
I think they'll hang in there in this game. I do. My picks. I'm gonna start Turkey Day, and this is another rivalry game. I'm gonna grab the Packers plus 7.5. Last couple weeks, the Packers are still playing hard. Love had probably his best game of the year last week against the Chargers. The Lions, for whatever reason, are not a blowout team, generally speaking. The games seem to be competitive, and I think this is a fat number. I think the Packers will play them hard. Probably similar to the Bears game. I think somehow the Lions win this game at the end. But the Packers just need to play good football, and they should fall within this number. I like the 7.5. I'm going to go to a team. I wouldn't have made this a pick if I didn't see some things with the Bills on Sunday that I liked. I think they found a little mojo offensively, and the Eagles are coming off a huge win on Monday Night Football on the road, short week. You got to come home and listen. This is Chad's team. He picked them to go to the Super Bowl. And I'll say this. I don't know where the Bills are, where their season's going to end up, but I still think if you made me pick a roster in the AFC, I would probably still take their roster. And I think you're giving them 3.5. I know the Eagles have been finding ways to win, but the Eagles games are all close. I mean, they don't have many blowout wins. So give me the Bills plus 3.5 here. And then finally, the Cardinals have showed me something the last couple of weeks. They haven't quit on the season. They got Kyler Murray back. They won a game. They probably could have won a game against the surprisingly good Houston Texans team last week. I think they're home. The Rams should be fat, dumb, and happy. They somehow figured out a way to win in Seattle last week, right? Or was that in Los Angeles? I think that was in Seattle. Or were they home? Either way, it doesn't matter.
I think it was home.
Yeah, they're on the West Coast. They're going to slide over to Arizona, and I think they're going to find a Cardinal team that's still playing competitive football with a little more firepower now with Kyler Murray. I like the Cardinals minus 1.5 to beat the Rams.
All right, recapping it. He likes the Packers on Turkey Day to as a 7.5 point underdog against the surging Detroit Lions. He's going to take the Bills against the flying too high Eagles in a Sunday battle, and then he's going with the Arizona Cardinals. He likes a couple of birds here. He's going to take the Arizona.
Yeah, a lot of birds for Turkey Day.
Yeah, exactly. There it is. All right, he's taking the Cards minus 1.5. Just going back to close out the show on that Michigan-Ohio State game. I'm kind of with you there, Emil. I think we kind of underrated the Ohio State defense. And what I've seen the last couple of weeks are some struggles from Michigan on the offensive side of the ball. And then last week against Maryland, Ohio State isn't bringing this to town, but I think Maryland may have shown enough to puncture what has been the most steal of units all year of anything in college football, which has been the Michigan defense. I think there's enough data that has been laid out there for Maryland, for Ohio State to kind of find their way to get enough points to, if not cover this number, win the game. And so I do see.
Well, and you know what I look at in a game like this, right? I see Ohio State got better all year offensively too. They have a guy who can change the game, a guy that can make the plays like a Harrison Jr. And I looked at Michigan playing Penn State, and I said, well, okay, Penn State's got a really good defense. Ohio State's a level above that. And I don't think you're going to be able to do what Michigan did. I mean, they didn't throw a pass in the second half of the Penn State game.
Yeah, and they don't have a guy outside on the edge that can change the game. So if you get in there and you stuff that running game and Corum and Edwards can't get loose, Michigan's got a lot of problems.
Yeah, and I think that's obvious with Ohio State having been beat up in the trenches the last couple of years. You would think their focus this week are going to be like, listen, if they're going to beat us, they're going to have to hit some long passes. They're not going to embarrass us and run the ball down our throat.
Yeah, 100%. So I think the upset is brewing there. It's going to make for a very, very interesting story and week after that. That's the Big Ten is going to be a whole lot of fun if and when that happens. All right, that's it for us. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We want all of you to have a happy and healthy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the food, enjoy the family, and enjoy the football. All right, we're going to be back here again next week, recapping our picks and talking about what's coming up next in the world of football. So for Emil Calamino, I'm Chad Wilson. Thanks for watching and listening to the Two Chumps Football Podcast. See you guys next week.